I think this is a really good question. Obviously, most of us, if we look around our neighborhoods right now, will probably see not mixed income neighborhoods. Probably a lot of the people that live around us have similar incomes to us because that's how a lot of our neighborhoods are. But I would definitely argue that in an ideal strong town, we would have neighborhoods with a lot more diversity in terms of home values, home types, the people that can live there. This is just like realistic for life. At all of us at different phases of our life have probably lived in different sorts of homes, whether we were, children, maybe in a single family home or an apartment, when you're a young adult and you're scraping by, maybe in a house with a bunch of other young adults or, in a tiny apartment like I'm currently in. And then as you get to later phases in life, you have different needs. Maybe you need an accessible home if you're getting on in years, need a wheelchair, things like that. So I think a strong neighborhood would absolutely allow for these different sorts of housing, different sorts of incomes. Again, like most people will have different levels of income at different phases in their life, especially when we experience insane economic shocks like we're experiencing right now. So yes, a strong neighborhood would allow for different types of homes and incomes. That's just like what makes a strong, solid fabric, I think. And if we look at like the situation that we're in right now, I think one beautiful thing that I've seen is folks that are able to like help their elderly neighbors out that are down the block or get groceries for a family that's got a bunch of kids they're juggling at home right now. So neighborhoods that allow for, again, like different sorts of people in different sorts of homes to live side by side, that just builds a really strong fabric of people. And to piggyback on the questions that we were just talking about earlier, the best way to get that type of neighborhood is just to allow it to happen through your zoning codes and all the permissions that are existing in your city, rather than like trying to artificially force it as some neighborhoods do. I think the strongest town will just allow like a duplex to pop up over here or an apartment or whatever is needed most by the people at that time. I'm sure my colleagues can jump in with other good insights too.
Actually, it's interesting because right now your master's program, Rachel, is in what?
Theological studies, technically.
So I have this, when I hear this question, in my mind, it goes back to like biblical times and these images of the wealthiest people being in this like inner court. And then you had an outer court and an outer court and an outer court. And they would actually configure their homes where the very poor people could sit on the far outside and like peer all the way in. And this was like radical income, radical wealth inequality on a scale that even today, as absurd as our wealth inequality is, was not even as skewed as this, because this was like literally a handful of people had everything and everybody else had nothing. As you see like human civilizations evolve and adapt, what you see is that there's always been a certain amount of, and I'm going to get a little philosophical here, income inequality or wealth inequality. But when it's well mixed, there almost is like and I think we can just think of it as like social pressure to, to give back, to be philanthropic, to help those around you when you're actually touching flesh with the people in your community on a day-to-day basis. We see the It's a Wonderful Life. I can't remember the bad guy character, the banker there. I can't remember. You know who I'm talking about, though. His whole thing was, he's this evil, like he's collected all the money. Yeah. But the wealth disparity between him and the other people in the community was not that great, comparatively speaking to, the way that it is today. And I think a lot of that has to deal with the fact that we live with each other. Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations is, the invisible hand of the market. And I think we've taken the idea of the invisible hand and we've equated it with greed is good and capitalism and what have you. But Adam Smith wrote The Theory of Moral Sentiments before that, which really talked about how our transactions all have a moral dimension to them. When our transactions are distant and opaque, it tends to be agreed as good. When they're close and relational, that moral element starts to seep in. And I don't want to get too philosophical with it. And this is why I'd ask you, because I think this is more your background. But to me, there's a certain aspect of mixing of incomes and mixing of housing types that it just makes us better people in a way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One example that's just coming to mind for me, and then I'll stop taking up all the time, is like when you have like tourist towns, or so I'm in the Boston area right now. There are like Cape Cod and like Martha's Vineyard. These are these really nice vacation areas. But the, amidst all of these huge vacation homes are also a bunch of people, at least during the vacation season, that are like trying to work at the grocery store and like work at the restaurants and, clean the houses, do the gardening. And like those people can't find places to live. And it's a huge challenge, um, because we have this like weird wealth disparity. But yeah, if you want a community to function, you need people of all different sorts and all different income levels, and they need places to live.
Well, when I was in college too, I lived in a mansion. I don't know if you all knew this. I lived in a mansion. I just lived in it with 13 other people. Because what was once at one point like the rich person's house became the college place that was rented out to many, many different students. So, I mean, there is a circle of life here to these buildings, and I think it's important to keep that in mind too.